No pressure.
All right, guys, we are back, the Fitness Podcast. I am your host today, Emily Anger. With me, I have a really good friend of mine. His name is Rob Leiby, and he is the founder of Modern Day Warrior. Welcome, Rob. How are you today?
Hello, Emily. I'm doing great, thank you. I am awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I am really excited about this conversation. We sat here and we had a little pre-call or pre-talk, so I'm actually like buzzing. So I think we should just get into it straight away.
I agree.
So I think the first question we always ask people when they come on is, what does fitness mean to you?
Yeah, okay, awesome question. Good. Not broad at all. Right, what does fitness mean? Okay, so this is a really interesting question because it's definitely changed over the years. My definition of fitness and what it means to me has changed so much over the years. I think when I'm talking about that, I'd also have to include health as well. Fitness and health for me, they encompass such a wide range now of what it means, right? But previously, that's never been the case. It's always been a case of looking the best that you can. So fitness initially when I started, and this has been my own personal journey, and I know we all have our own journeys, but initially when I started, fitness was all about, well, actually, do you want me to go real deep? We can go all the way
Yeah,
back and go
you
real.
know we
Okay,
always go deep.
okay, let's do it. Okay, I love it. Okay, so
Deeper is better.
initially,
We have a saying here in the fitness podcast: depth matters. So there you go.
all right, let's start from the start then.
Let's
I
start from
love
the
it.
side.
So the reason I initially got into fitness was that when I was a teenager, when I was sort of, let's say 13, 14, going through puberty, going through all of those things, I had a terrible relationship with my mum. I was an extremely angry. I used to call myself an effed up kid. I used to say I was an effed up kid. I was an angry kid. I identified as being that person. That was who I was. And that was what I became because I identified as that. I was so angry all the time. And for about 2 years, probably between 13, 14, and 15, I woke up angry every day. Literally, like if there's one emotion that I know very, very well, it's rage and anger. I know that what it feels like to just be angry over nothing, to just be like furious at the world, at my mum, at myself, for all of these little things. And I didn't even really understand why. Um, so my initial reason for getting into fitness, because of how messed up I was, and I don't identify as that anymore. That holds no claim to me. I have no victimization over that at all anymore, which is
Yeah,
amazing. And I actually really understand anger very, very well, which allows me to be very calm nowadays.
yeah. I've never known you as the angry guy. You have definitely done the work since we got to know each other. So that's job well done. But tell me more.
Yeah,
So you were
yeah,
15. What happened?
exactly. So nobody would think of that right now. Like you'd never think, oh my God, this guy's like got loads of rage in his heart or anything like that. Um, so I needed an outlet, to express all of this. And it actually ended up with me sort of, as I call it now, running away from my problems. I ran away. I went down, I was living in York and I ran away down to London to live with my dad because he had a place down here. And when I was down here, I sort of also at the same time went to college, pursued all these different things, and ended up finding this little bodybuilding gym. So I found this sort of bodybuilding gym, and it was just a perfect environment, perfect atmosphere, dark, grungy, sweat and sawdust sort of thing. And just ended up sort of falling in love with training because it became this perfect outlet to express all this anger and rage that I had inside. Now I know now that maybe wasn't the most compassionate way of doing it to myself, the most loving way of doing it to myself by just beating myself up it became a thing of like, right, let's just train as hard as I can, let's beat myself. I was doing the typical stuff of training, just smashing the legs, smashing the chest, smashing the back. But to be honest, I made most of my gains in those first sort of few years, like most of us, right?
Hmm.
Made loads of gains. And that was kind of how I got into fitness, because initially I actually wanted to be an actor. So I was doing loads of auditions and I went down to London to do all my auditions and things like that. And then just got sort of, the more I got immersed in the bodybuilding and the fitness side of things, I did a show actually, which it might be good to talk about that actually in terms of the mental side of that, because that really messed me up. But that's a separate story. So yeah, got into all that and then just slowly started to do my PT courses and just go from there basically. So that's what fitness used to mean to me. And now as I've gone through all of the years of training, so I've been a trainer for about 8 years now, and as I've gone through that, I've realized that it's completely adapted and changed into what it is now. And for me now, to summarize it, because I've just rambled as I always do, I think it's an amalgamation of your physical health, your mental health, your ability to deal with things, your spiritual health, your emotional health. So it encompasses all of those different things. So for me, fitness is, you can be very physically fit, and I have been in great shape and been lean and all this sort of stuff, as I know you have as well, but not really felt good. So that was not really fitness. That wasn't really health. That was just, in good shape, but your brain wasn't in good shape, your soul wasn't in good shape, your heart might not be in good shape. So all of these things, for me, it's not one thing, it's a combination of all of these things.
Yeah, I recognize a lot in myself in your story. Maybe that's why we always got along without actually knowing each other's story, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So how did this, like, when did you find that it actually changed from being rage to being something else?
Great question. Again, it's not been one thing. If you ask me to define it in one thing, it's not been one thing. It's been a continual series of epiphanies as I've gone through my life. So I used to try and make myself break down every 6 months, like almost deliberately, and I knew that I was on the right path if I was breaking down. So it was a case of, I remember seeing one time somebody saying, every 6 months you look back at yourself and you realize you're a completely different person to that 6 months before. And that has been the truest expression of my life. Is that I'm just going to say 6 months. It's a totally arbitrary number, right? But every 6 months, it's like, I'm completely different. I'm a new person. It's like a shedding of a skin, And some people think that's changing, and everyone like sort of has this fear of change. But for me, it's just growth. It's just improvement. It's continual improvement. And that's actually one of the meanings of life for me, is to constantly be improving and to adding these layers to myself. So a couple of moments where I realized it was when I was able to sort of forgive myself and my mum. That was huge, when I was able to love myself and really understand a little bit more about what self-love actually meant, to understand a bit more about what self-compassion meant, and to not do things to punish myself, but to do things rather because it was really true to me and who I wanted to be. And I think the reason right now why I feel so purposeful and so blissful with my company is that it feels like I can really truly express exactly what I want to do, who I want to be, the sort of message that I want to be giving out to the world, and what I want to be giving back, taking back, and receiving back, So there's no real sort of discord or dissonance within my brain about that. It's like, yes, these are the things that I really feel to be true about myself and who I want to be. And as I've worked through that trauma, that's allowed me to say, well, evaluate the anger, have a look at it and go, oh, okay, well, that was an interesting emotion. I understand why I had it, I understand what was going on. I forgive myself and the people involved in it, I took personal responsibility. That's a huge one. That's absolutely massive.
Don't you
I
think
believe that's,
that is
again, one of the keys.
the significant moment in most people's life when they realized true responsibility, what it means? Like that mental shift after you realize, like when it actually sinks in, it's transformative in itself. That moment when you go, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry, I cut
totally.
you off, but
No, not at all. Not at all. You're absolutely right. Thank you for the guidance. I 100% think that is one of the most freeing things that can happen in the world, is when you start to realize that every single thing that goes on around you is on you. And so people are going to reject that idea. What do you mean? If somebody does this, well, no, because it's all about your perception. It's all about the way that you see things, and you have to recognize that you have complete power and complete responsibility over everything that you choose to think, everything that you choose to do, and yes, it might be on a subconscious level. So it might be deeply embedded within you to judge that person or to think of that situation in a certain way. But you can change that as well. We know now, science says that you can 100% change that. We can change the way that our brain is wired and what's going on. So yeah, I mean, that was a combination of a few books and extreme ownership,
I wanted to actually go back and ask you, like, where did you find, because I've done a heck of a lot of personal development, right? When did you get onto that path?
Yeah, that was 10 years ago when I first went down to London at about 14. And I read my first sort of book about it. I think it was How to Win Friends and Influence People, classic,
Yeah.
you know. And I sort of at that point remember thinking, well, there's a bit more to life than just being angry all the time. Like you don't have to be, what? You mean like I can take responsibility over these things and then that starts to change the way I can think about things. Um, Now that hasn't always been, as we know, that's not been smooth sailing the whole way through. It's not like, oh, I'll read the book and then I think with all self-development books, if you could apply everything that they tell you, like literally like that, you'd probably have a really great time of it. But that's just not possible because we have emotions, we have trauma, and we have things that limit us, and you know. But yeah, it was 10 years ago probably, and then just literally getting immersed in books of self-development and all of these different things and podcasts and articles and courses, just constantly throughout. I was saying the other day, I don't think there's been more than 6 months over this last sort of 8 years where I've not had something going on the side, so maybe a couple of months where I haven't had a course or a book or something that I'm studying, to improve myself. And I think that's been one of the biggest things for the success that I've had.
But I think that's another thing to personal development. It's like the more you know you need to work on, the more you want to work on it. It's the way that I usually say when someone's never done personal development, it's like it needs to get really dark before it gets light again. Because you have to realize all the shit that you're having inside of you, that you might have suppressed, you weren't aware of, your programming, why you do the things you do, and then going, well, how do I change me? Can I change me if this has been given, if my values have been given by my parents, if if something happened to me as a child, like how can I change? So it has to get dark before it gets light again. But it's so beautiful and freeing on the other side. And then you realize that you'll never finish. There's always going to be things coming up. Like I work with a coach still. I have coach like, and I just think that you have blind spots as well, right? And it kind of is the value of having someone there to take you through your blind spots and have you excel through your emotions, whether it's business, like you can have a business coach, fitness, emotional therapy. There's so many ways of getting coaching that actually helps you in so many ways. But I think for me, what I found, the more I work on my emotions, the better everything else around me gets. When I really work on my emotions, my business goes well. When I work on my emotions, I have great relationships. And it kind of is that thing of if you work on yourself, you work on everything else. You might not see it as that, but it's just incredible, right? When you actually can start to connect the dots.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, it's the most valuable investment, that you can do. Investing in yourself, I don't even know. I mean, I don't know how much I've spent on it now over the years, in terms of, but thousands and thousands of pounds in terms of investing in yourself, because I know that investment comes back tenfold in the end. So if you're going to invest in anything, invest in yourself and improving yourself. But yeah, like you're saying, I've got 2 coaches and a therapist for a mum at the moment. So I got a business coach, I got a personal training coach, and I got my mum as a therapist who constantly bounces stuff back off. And actually, we're going to go and do with my partner, we're going to do some therapy, some couples therapy as well. So because I recognize that I know a certain amount, but that's extremely limited. Even with all the work, even 10 years of work, it's still limited. Like you say, there is a journey, and I believe this is the warrior's journey. I believe that the warrior's journey never ends, that it goes right until the end of your life. You're still going to be learning things about yourself. And that contained within that and becoming present within that journey, that to me is the secret of life and happiness.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Oh, this gets me so excited.
I love it.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and we're probably going to come back to a few of these things, but I want to ask you, what gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, brilliant question. And there's 2 components to this. The first one I'm going to say real simple, like in one sentence. is I want to get to the end of my life and I want to look back at what I've done. And even if the end of my life is tomorrow, I want to get to the end of my life. And I thought it's really interesting you said that, because I literally thought about this last night. I was thinking, if I genuinely died, because I went skydiving yesterday, right? So as you do, I thought if I die on this plane, if I like genuinely, because it's actually very safe, but that's a separate story. If
Still,
I die on this plane,
you know,
hey,
there's a risk, but there is a
there's
safe,
always a risk.
but
Yeah,
there's always a
exactly.
risk.
If I die on this plane, would I be happy with the life that I live? So that question drives me constantly. Is just, I want to get to the end of my life and say, you know what, that was a good one.
Yeah. And I mean,
That's it.
you and I just briefly talked about death before we pressed record. And I do that as well. I actually meditate on death quite often
Yeah,
for that reason of like getting myself in the place of like, am I really living the life that I want to live? So that by the end of it, even if it is today or tomorrow, in 10 years' time or in 50 years' time, can I say that I was happy? And can I say that I was happy being who I am? Right? It's not, for me, it's not about like what I'm acquiring over the years. It's has nothing, like it doesn't really drive me that much. Of course, I want things. I do. I have goals. But it really, when you think about it, what do you want to be remembered as? That's going to be another question. But like, what if you were to actually die and I would show up onto your funeral? Like, what would you want me to say on that funeral? If you were the
that's a great question. And I think it's not even so much as what do I want to be remembered by, it's what energy, what imprint do I want to leave behind? What does the energy that I'm accumulating and into my aura, into my presence, what do I want to leave behind? What's the And I think when we interact with other people and we help other people, depending on the intention of that help, that is what leaves our energetic imprint on the world. So if I help somebody out from the genuine goodness and I really want to be helping them, this is a really interesting one that I had to do with my business, because I did started to get caught up in the numbers because it's accelerating and going crazy. But I started to get caught up in the numbers, and I was like, and I really took some time and actually shed some tears over the fact that I need to be grateful for what's going on right now and lead my business from my heart and really try and just genuinely help people, not for any other, just because we want to make the world a bit of a better place. I think when you do it from that place and you leave that energy with that other person, that is the most beautiful thing, because it's like that energy stays with them and that goes through their life, and then that gets passed on to their kids, and then that gets passed on to so actually we all create these marks. It's that butterfly effect, right? We all create these marks on the world, and so I think that's really, I'd just like to be remembered for being a decent guy that was on the path and did some good work in the world, and did his bit to change as many lives as possible.
yeah.
That's my goal.
I was thinking about it yesterday, and I started typing a post about like legacy and stuff like that. And then to the end of it, I just got to the point where I said, I just want to be remembered as someone who was kind, caring, and had a positive impact on other people around me, whoever I got to meet. That was it. There was nothing like, oh, I want to have this like multi-billion thing. That could, of course, mean the same thing, because it would be like the effects of it. But it's not like I don't want to be remembered as the most wealthiest woman in the world. Cool if it happens, but fuck that. I'd rather be Mother Teresa, right? I'd rather be a Mother
Yeah,
Teresa that just goes,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's just me in terms of like, because I'm the same with like the whole thing about energy and making a good imprint and actually working from the heart. Yeah. So yeah,
I think also that the other side to that is that I don't just want to be remembered for my good shit. I want to be remembered for all the work that I did on my bad stuff, and to be an example of like, hey, you know what? This guy was pretty messed up at points. This guy had a lot of, like you were saying earlier, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to us before we find who we are as the truest expression. And it's taken me 10 years of self-development to really start to get a bit more clear. And I still know there's more to do. I still know there's more layers to uncover, traumatic layers and blockages and self-limiting beliefs and stuff, like even literally just last month, has been a massive sort of change in my self-limiting beliefs, because I set myself a 12-month goal and I hit it in 4 months. So I was like, what? Like, if you can do that. And then I started saying to everyone, like, look, don't set yourself small goals, set yourself a huge goal, but accept that the journey to get there is what really matters, and that's what life is all about. But expect to do, massive things, because if you set yourself a small goal, you've already set that self-limiting belief, and that's already capped you. So it's like shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon, right?
Yeah, I love that. And also, I think being able to change direction as you go as well, to not be so obsessed about the outcome that you forget that sometimes the outcome was just a guiding compass to where you needed to go. Actually, I've had a client for quite some time, and we've been doing body composition for a long time in our previous years, and I know that both you and I are starting to do slightly different things, which I find super exciting and really important work, right? So this client of mine, she's still with me, and we've done a huge amount of work together this year or last year, and all of a sudden we just came to this realization that she needs to go back to her endurance racing. And so I think the work that we've done, and when you've been so focused on like the training, and you think it is because I'm going to get ripped, or I'm going to get, and I want it, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you realize that work was not about that. It was about now actually having the strength, conditioning to go and do the things, right? So your life can change direction, and it's okay, but then realize that everything that you've done has still been important. I never think that anything is a waste of time, unless you're like literally strolling on your phone. Like, of course, there's like dead time that people could be using for something more purposeful and meaningful. But in terms of like the efforts we put in, when we actually put the effort in, it's never a waste of time, because you change direction. You can see that I needed to do this to be able to go there. And I just, like, when we just came to this realization, I was so excited, and I'm still so excited, because man, and also it brings my, because she's going to do some like ultra heavy stuff. She's gonna do like the transcontinental biking, and like she's just gonna go for it. I'm like, okay, we got this.
I love that.
Now I have to up my game as well in terms of coaching, because now all of a sudden she's taking me to a different level, which is amazing. But I'm diverting now. So tell me about your coaching.
No, I think that is really interesting, though. That I would just say one thing on that is, I am prepared at a moment's notice, at the presentation of new information, at the click of the fingers, to change the entire course of my life if I need to. To not be attached to anything that's come before. Yes, I have beliefs and I have morals and values and a code that I aim to follow as best as I can right now. But sometimes you read something, or you learn something, or something clicks, and your entire belief system gets thrown out the window, and you rewrite it and you go again. It was like the other couple of months ago, about maybe last year, actually, I read The Way of the Superior Man. So if there are any men listening, I just want to say, read that book, The Way of the Superior Man. It's one of the best books. By David Data. It is one of the best books. And even for women, if you want to learn why your partner might be doing something, if you have any connection with, it's all about masculine and feminine energy. I know we're slightly diverting, but that is genuinely one of the recommendations that I would 100% add it in show notes or whatever. But yeah, get that one done. Way of the Superior Man. It changed my life and the trajectory of who I am as a man. So that was powerful.
That's a powerful statement too. That's not like a light statement. So
no.
Exciting. I'm going to read it. I know that we talked about it in the past, but I actually never got to read it. So it needs to be dropped into the box ASAP.
Go on, carry on.
Just going back to your coaching, like, how do you conduct your coaching now, maybe differently than you did a few years ago?
Yeah, amazing. So I've always been an in-person coach, always sort of one-to-one training sessions in the gym, trading time for money, that sort of stuff. And it's not a pitch for online coaching or anything like that, but that's how I've always done it. I love it. I actually really enjoy being with a client, having that face-to-face connection, feeling the energy, seeing them training, doing all this sort of stuff. I love that, So at the moment, my coaching model has now shifted, though. Obviously, with lockdown and everyone having to adapt, it definitely changed. And doing virtual sessions, doing online coaching, doing all of these different things has definitely been incorporated. But I would actually say right now, my coaching model is kind of very flexible. It's very whatever I want it to be. You know, without seeming arrogant, it is whatever I want it to be. You know, I have a model, but that can adapt and change to what that person needs and their budget and things like that. So at the moment, it is an online based mastermind program. So the Modern Day Warrior Master Plan. And there's different options with that, whether they do like group calls, we do like a group coaching model, we do like a one-to-one coaching model where they work directly with me. And then there's also just programs and plans and things that we can give if that's something that they need. And I do a couple of hybrid sort of in-person sessions, virtual training sessions, just to keep my eye in. You know, don't want to lose that. We've got a bit of a garage gym out here. So it's very flexible depending on what the person needs. But yeah, it's definitely expanded and adapted. I've got a membership site now that I use for, you know, modules, and that's my eventual plan, is to bring it to a big membership at the Warriors Academy. You know, told many people about that, so that's exclusive right here. You heard it here first.
Pressure. I love that. Yesterday I spoke to another guy, and he's been putting his podcast out. So now it's like, you know, we said things, we have to show up and we have to do them. So, and I think it's a very important thing to realize here that, you know, you and I, we coach people, and we are like there to keep people accountable, to show up and do the things that they say they will do. And that's the thing, that we're exactly the same. Everyone is always the same, just in different avenues, right? So yeah,
We all need accountability. We all need the information and we need support.
support, yes.
Support. That is 100%. Like, that's why I've got two coaches at the moment, and I feel extremely fortunate, extremely grateful to have a great family and network around me. I've got a group of men that we do men's groups and courses with, and those are like the brothers, the gang, you know, which is phenomenal. And I would definitely again recommend every man or woman have your group, you know, have your team. Like, women naturally gravitate towards talking and sharing more anyway, but men need to have there's a podcast, I can't remember who it's by, but called Band of Brothers. You need to have a band of brothers, men that will call them out on their BS, guide them in the right path, help them when they're, you know, if I ever have a down moment, I'll go and I'll post it in the group. Hey guys, I'm needing some support on this one. I'm feeling this way. I'm doing this thing. Somebody's doing this to me. Somebody's doing that, you know, and invariably it comes back to taking personal responsibility for my own stuff anyway. But they help me to shine a bit of a light, which then allows me to come to the solution. So yeah, get yourself a team, you know.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
You're gonna win.
So tell me about your training at the moment.
Yeah, awesome. So I've just started working with a new coach, with one of the Muscle Mentors guys, James, and lockdown was rough. Lockdown was rough for me. I put on body fat and lost muscle, the opposite of what you'd want to be doing, like probably most people out there. But yeah, mine was pretty bad, pretty poor. Even though I do have a gym and stuff like that, still just the motivation, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, I wasn't in the right place to do it. So, but I recognize that now, and that's fine. So at the moment, my own training, we've sort of mapped out this year where we want to go. We've got a real clear picture of what's going to happen. So we're in a deficit. We're shredding down a little bit, probably about 15% body fat at the moment, which is kind of very high for me. It's not where it's the highest. I'm the fattest that I've ever been. So we need to sort that out first, get myself a bit leaner. So I'm in a bit of a deficit, which is interesting because I haven't been in a deficit for a while. Shred down for 6 weeks, then just build, go back to cruising, build for a bit, see what we can do. But it feels really nice to have a proper structured training program that doesn't let me get away with stuff that I would write myself. You know, so but yeah, it's good to have a clear plan. I've got a proper, you know, nutrition plan. I know what I'm doing, know what I'm eating, tracking the calories, doing all these different things. At the moment, it's 4 times a week with some cardio in there, so it's quite flexible in terms of, you know, play football last night and doing this. So I'm really enjoying having that structured plan, having a proper program.
So what is the goal, say, like the long-term goal working with him? Like what are you actually aiming for?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to keep adding strength, muscle, and just see that journey. So adding strength and size, and just enjoy the journey along the way, learning a bit more about, you know, get a bit more disciplined for me. That's really what it is, you know, because it's such a lifestyle for me now. I don't really have a specific goal at the moment. I don't really want to get to 80 kilo or 85 kilos because I'm about 80 at the moment. Don't really want to get to a certain goal or anything like that. I just want to see what I can do with a year of like disciplined work and to
Yeah.
build in some proper habits. That's what it is. Building some proper habits for success, discipline, and training, you know, get myself a bit healthier, sort out some of the crappy habits that I've picked up, like sleeping too late and being on my phone and all this sort of stuff through lockdown. So just having that accountability is brilliant, and having a proper program to do that. You know, this is one thing that's really good, is he's giving us certain habits to work on, you know, bedtime routines, things to do, you know, things to think about whilst I'm eating, you know, chewing my food more, getting to bed earlier, wearing blue light, all these sort of things. So that's really good. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. I want to go back to your lockdown, because I think this is a valid thing for the listeners to maybe, you know, either for them to think about what happens for themselves, or whether they've been there, or whether they could take something away for it. Why do you think that you struggled to create that habit of exercising during lockdown? Like, or maybe you exercise but maybe not as consistently. So why do you think that struggle occurred?
I'm not sure whether it was just because of lockdown, because I haven't had a training program and a specific push for quite some time now. And actually, this kind of goes, I'll be honest with you, this goes back to my competition that I did when I was like 18, 19, because I was seriously dieting and I was seriously on it. And then my mindset at the time, I didn't place where I wanted to, I placed fourth, and I was much leaner than the, you know, subjective stuff, right? And all this sort of things. And there was a problem with my registration and loads of things like that. So I felt quite cheated at the time. There's probably still some stuff to do on that, actually, when I think about it. But from that, from that post competition, apart from the photo shoot that I did a while, like 2 years ago, I've never really actually got myself back on a proper discipline routine. That's the truth. It completely effed me up. You
Yeah.
know, it was the worst thing that I could. Yes, I learned some stuff, but it was actually the worst. I wish I had a coach who said, no, don't do that. You know, I wish I had someone who said, why are you doing that? What are you doing it for? Because I was doing it for the win. I was doing it to get first place, to feel like that would validate me, you know. So yeah, it really messed up my mind. And I haven't had a proper training routine. I haven't felt disciplined. Before that, I was going to the gym 6 times a week. I was disciplined. I would eat. I would prep all my food. Now I can't stand. Well, I'm all right with it now, but for a long time, I couldn't stand prepping. You know, I didn't have a proper training program. Nothing. It was like it messed me up. You know.
Mm.
So I'd just say for anyone who wants to do anything like getting really lean or doing a photo shoot or anything like that, just be really, really careful about the reasons as to why you're doing it. You know, if you want to do it for yourself because you want to see what your body's capable of. That definitely wasn't why I was doing it. I was doing it to get a win, to feel superior in some way, to create this external validation of like how good I am and how good my physique looked. And maybe that was a lesson that I needed to learn about it, you know, is that was the wrong reason for doing it. So I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons why I'm enjoying it so much this time is it really feels like now is a chance to sort of build that discipline back as a trainer and as a person, to set a great example of what it should look like, but to do it in a much healthier way.
We
And to
talk
say,
about
you know,
love, right? At that
self-love.
point, you probably hadn't realized that all of your choices should come out of self-love, not self-destruction or trying to reach for validation which you aren't given yourself, right? And I think this is like a really important topic. And I mean, I've been there myself. My first ever prep was the most horrendous thing I've ever gone through, physically, mentally, and health-wise as well. Like I ended up actually harming myself in a way, right? I had an eating disorder and I lost my period, and it took some time to heal. And yeah, you just have to realize why you do the things you do. And then of course you can realize that you can do whatever you want, but it has to be for the right reasons. It has to be because you want to know what you're capable of, and that's exciting. It's not that you need to do something because if not, you're not worthy, or because if not, you're not good enough,
Yeah.
right? You need to do the things you do because you know you're worthy and because you know you have more to give. That's it. It's the thing that changes everything.
Yeah, it's got to come from that place of self-love and self-compassion. And I think it's really interesting you said about that, about your prep being brutal mentally and physically, is that nowadays in this world, this actually pisses me off. I'm going to get a bit passionate now, because there's a glorification of beasting yourself, of overworking, of doing too much. There's a massive thing. Oh yeah, that guy's grinding harder. That guy's hustling harder than anyone else. Yeah, he's the hardest worker in the room. Great. If that's who you are, brilliant. If that's really what you want to be, and that's not coming out of a huge amount of trauma, or that's not coming out of a place of self-destruction that you hate yourself and you have to work so hard that you need that validation from that hard work, great. But if you've not done that work, if you've not looked internally and said, hey, is this actually really who I want to be? Do I really want to be someone up on stage, so, flaunting myself and getting judged? Because it's a subjective judgment of others. Like if you're in the best shape of your life and you know that you're in the best shape of your life and you've done it and you've done the journey and you've learned the things along the way and you've had an amazing journey, who gives a shit if the judges think that you're bad, or the judges think that you're not as good compared to someone else because maybe your abs are slightly asymmetrical?
Which you
It
can't
really,
change, by the way.
but you can't change. That's the one thing about me. I've got a weird 7-pack. I got like, and then I got like this weird thing at the top there.
It's
There's
also
nothing you can do about it.
like
Yeah, wonky abs. But yeah, it pisses me off because there's so many things now as well, and that's glorified. It's like, oh yeah, he's hustling so hard. No, he's not. He's killing himself, or she's killing herself. They're burning the candle at both ends. They're doing extremely unhealthy habits. Their mindset's completely screwed up because it's all about like beating themselves up, and if they fail something, they create this punishment mentality about how bad they are and how much of a failure they are. And I know that I know that so much. That's literally like, that is probably one of the biggest messages that I get across to my clients nowadays, is because you do something slightly off plan, you're not a failure. It doesn't matter. It's like, you're human. I want to talk about one thing actually, which is, I was saying I used to identify as an angry person. And the truth is, this is what I say now. No one is, insert here, a person. You are a person. You're an amazing human being that is doing angry things.
Yeah, it's your
That
program.
is experiencing the emotion of anger. Yeah, exactly. You're not an angry person. You're not an effed up person. You're a person that's doing subjectively messed up things, or a person that's doing the things that or you could even see it in another way. You're a person that's doing the things that they need to do in order to unlock their true potential and find their true self. And if those things come across as aggressive or angry, or they harm, well, that's just life. We're fundamentally flawed as human beings, and we all carry trauma. So it is what it is, right?
Something that I always kind of say is that your wounds become your superpowers, right?
Yeah.
You learn only by the hard stuff. You never learn about from the wins. You can hopefully appreciate them. A very flailing moment when you actually got something that you wanted, and then you realize that you weren't any happier. Like, but the true growth comes from like having a bit of a shit time. God knows,
100%.
right? And the trauma that someone experiences, the failures, or if we reframe them, the lessons, the learnings, Of course, you can get stuck to do the same lesson over and over again if you refuse to like learn something from it or change your direction. But
Even that's not a bad thing then.
sometimes you need to
That's
go through
fine.
the same
Yeah.
things over and over again. And that is the thing. It's like you read a book, you read so many self-help books, and then all of a sudden it's that one thing that said exactly the same thing that the other one does. All of a sudden you got the message because you were a recipient to it.
Yeah, you were in a place that was able to actually receive that message and hear it, you know.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much about how you're saying that we don't grow. And I truly believe this. We do not grow inside our comfort zone. Now, I've told you earlier that the meaning of life to me, or one of the meanings of life, is to continually grow and to continually add layers and to experience that beauty that happens within growth, right? Of changing and realizing something. And they say ignorance is bliss. And I think that's the biggest load of crap ever. I think it's total ignorance is not bliss at all. It's actually a lack of awareness. Awareness, understanding, and love is bliss. That's my opinion. You know, I think it's a
I actually used that phrase yesterday. So, no, I think choosing ignorance is avoiding the conflict, which you know could potentially be the thing you needed to go through. So, in a way, it's blissful because you're choosing to not look at it, in a way, right? But I genuinely believe that you know when you should be going through something, when you should have that conversation with someone, when you should be going on the scale because you know you have, like, you know, there's so many like things that we can avoid because we don't want to face it, but we subconsciously know that we should be facing it. And it's the subconscious knowing of needing to face something that causes a dissonance and a discourse in our body, which creates unhappiness over time. It's because we are meant to challenge ourselves and go through that difficult time, whatever it is, whether it's a diet or it is, I don't know, going through therapy and finding out things. Like, we are meant to go that direction, because remaining here, even though ignorance is so-called bliss, it's not bliss because it's causing a lot of internal turmoil, because we understand that we're not supposed to stay here. There is something that we're supposed to be doing, right?
your soul. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Your soul knows, and you know deep down, if something is, if you're not aware of something or it's causing you some pain or suffering or something like that, you know that there's something wrong. The
People,
actual original.
people suppress though with everything. People are so good at suppressing. I genuinely think most people have the answers to most of their problems if they dare to not suppress them, because sometimes it's just hard to know the truth of what needs to happen, and then understanding that I need to do this in order for me to not feel this way. And sometimes I need to feel a little bit more shit temporarily to go through that breakthrough, so that I'm not sitting here in this comfort zone where I know I'm going to be feeling shit, or where I've been feeling I'm supposed to be something else or have something else, or, you know. So yeah, that's just,
Painful to do that. It's painful to do that work, you know.
yeah.
The original quote of ignorance is bliss actually came from a guy in 1942 who was actually a scholar, and he said, if ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. But he was talking about, like, he wasn't saying don't try and get any better, you know, because he was literally like a scholar. He was like super, super smart. But he realized that the more you know, the more you realize you don't actually know. So you have to keep going at it, you know. So I thought that was really interesting when you actually, we have all these little sound bites kind of piss me off sometimes because they're just like,
Guy.
hey.
Are you sure you're not still that angry guy?
Only when I see injustice, you know. No, just because they're thrown out with no context and they need context all the time. That's all it is.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself going? I mean, you're still very young, which, you know, and I think it's incredible your journey, what you've already done. Like, I know you personally, so I can like honestly say that. But where do you see yourself go in like the next 10 years?
You know, I've written down my visions and my big goals and things like that, you know, and what I'd like to achieve. And I'd like to help millions of people and deliver them a sort of create modern day warriors from those people, you know. I haven't really set a number because, like I said, is I've started off with like 10 million. Actually, no, sorry. I started off with 1 million in my academy. So, but to be honest, I know once I reach that, notice how I say once I reach that, not if I reach that. Once I reach that, then I'll just keep expanding and keep going. My goal is to reach loads of people and to help to just bring more awareness to people through education of physical, mental, and spiritual, to create this sort of modern day warrior ethos of like, there is more to life, not just in the physical way, which is one component of it, but also in the mental way, the spiritual way, going deeper, not being afraid to rumble with things like death, not being afraid to talk about the deeper stuff, the deeper traumas, all those sort of things, but realize that actually there's a support network, there's a community, there is all of the systems. And that's what my academy will eventually be, is every single thing, or as much as I know, just brain dumped into this one platform that people will be able to access, in the millions, and just to scale that up, and they can get the highest quality information of everything that I've studied and continuing to study and continuing to add to it and constantly evolving and adding that. And it will be like a sort of evolving thing as we go through the years, and they can get that and they can access it and they can have a support system and have an accountability system in place to make sure that they can do that. So the truth is I actually have no idea, because I set a 12-month goal and hit it in 4 months. So I don't know if in 10 years I'll have exceeded all of my, there are things that I'd like to do. I'd like to open up a chain of gyms/float centers, so that you combine the physical and the mental again. I'd like to set up my Warriors Academy. There's events and things that I'd like to do. I'd like to build my brand, build the, so that people know that they can come to me for help and get genuine advice and support. So I really don't know. That is the honest truth, is it could go anywhere. But I just know, and I've sort of known this, I know that, not just me, actually. Now I realize it's not just me. I believe that we all have incredible and infinite potential contained within us, and that we can actually do whatever we want. So I don't believe in there's the limits anymore. So it could go crazy. I could, I'd love to help millions and, billions of people. Who knows?
That's awesome. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram. That's probably the most I post every day on there. Facebook,
Your
Clubhouse
handle.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is Rob Leiby, Leiby, MDW. So Rob Leiby, MDW. Or you can check out Modern Day Warriors, the Modern Day Warriors on Facebook, or on Clubhouse, Rob Leiby, MDW as well. I host some rooms in there and talk quite a lot on there because I enjoy talking.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure. I didn't know where we were going with this, but I'm glad we did.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's really cool. We've obviously covered a lot of deeper topics there, not all related to fitness, but I love it. It's all relevant, right?
Everything is connected in my world. So yeah. Anyway, thank you again. It's been awesome. And I'm sure we'll see you again. Good luck.
Absolutely. Take care of yourself, Em.